Hello and welcome back. Today what I'm going to do is go over a quick overview of how to connect Visual Basic VB.NET to a MySQL database. So is go ahead and go to the MySQL website, and if you just go to MySQL.com, you will be able to go to products and go to Community Edition. When you go to Community Edition, you'll be able to download that. You'll be able to go to the download page and download that. Right now, you're not seeing anything except this stuff over here because I'm accessing this through the VB.NET. Through the MySQL Workbench. When you actually do it online, instead of going through the Workbench, this is what you'll get, and you just go ahead and download that. Let's see, you probably, if you have Windows 32-bit or 64-bit or whatever your operating system is, you'll be able to download that here. And again, that's on the MySQL website under Downloads. After you download that and install it, what you'll get is this little icon here that has your MySQL status, your MySQL database status. And if you right click that, you'll see right now I have WAMP installed. I'm not really using that right now. And here is the MySQL Workbench or the MySQL server that I just installed, and as you can see, it's running right now, and if I were to stop it, I can push this one or reset it. So right now I'm running the MySQL in the background. Now what I need to do is I have to go to my Visual Studio, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and start a new project. And because I don't really need any sort of interface or anything like that, I'm going to go ahead and do it as a console application. And I can just go ahead and call this VB MySQL. Hit enter from there. And this is what I'll get. And you should be pretty much familiar with this, with the interface here. And I'm gonna do it a little bit different. Normally, just for demonstration reasons, I could really just write everything in here, but just to kind of get you used to separating your code and separation of concerns, I'm just gonna put it in a different a class. So my connection to the database, I'm gonna put that in a different class. So I'm gonna right click here and go to add new item, and I will click the class here, and I'm gonna call this class, I'll call it MySQL Connect or Con. MySQL CONN, and then just hit add. Now I'm inside of MySQL Con, and now what I want to be able to do before I do anything is I have to be able to get a reference to MySQL. Now right now, if I were to do something like this, imports MySQL, but right now this is my project name. You see, this is not a reference to the MySQL connection that I need. So if you don't already have it, you need to go to MySQL again, to the downloads, and download the connection drivers for .NET. Now, like if it was PHP or something else, you may not need to do that. But when you're talking about dealing with MySQL and some sort of IDE like this, or even Java, you need a connection installation. And we need one specifically for .NET. And the way we do that is, again, we go to MySQL, go to downloads, go to connector, and then go to net for .NET, and then you go here and then you go ahead and download it for Windows. Click this button, download it, and install it. When you do that and you install it, basically now we can go ahead and add a reference to our project. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to right click this, I'm going to oh no, that's correct. I go here and I'm going to add, and I'm going to go here to references. Once I go into references, what I want to be able to do now is type my SQL. I just started typing it, and here it is right here, the MySQL data. I'm going to click that, click OK. Now I have a reference to the MySQL. Now if I type imports and then I start typing the MySQL in there, oops. So you see now I have the MySQL, I can type data and then MySQL client, and this is the reference that we need, and you saw how we got that by downloading the connection string, connection, sorry. Now I can go ahead and start connecting to my database, but first I need a connection. I need a connector, so I'm gonna do private underscore con as new MySQL connection. And now what I'm going to do is create a subroutine that will allow me to connect. So we're making this class so we can access it through the module. So I'm going to go ahead and make a public sub. I'll call that connect. That's what it's going to do. So in this connect, what I need to do is I'll dim the database name, and that's going to be a string, and that will equals ex, and then I'm going to connect to the server. And because we put this on our computer, all we have to do is put it as a local host. Every time you have a server on your system, normally it would be localhost, keeping everything default. So we have the localhost, and now we want to put our username. So I'll dim username as a string, and I just made something fairly simple on this because it's really not, it's just a test database that I had, so I didn't really put any sort of special username, and I didn't really put any sort of special password because I wanted it easy enough to be able to demonstrate things like this with. There's no real security concerns here because there's nothing to hack into. And then I'm gonna put that as root. Now if I were doing this and showing you how to connect to one of my servers or a server online, there's no way I'm going to be showing you my username and password, obviously, or even the connection string. So just keep that in mind. This is just for test purposes, so you would be able to change this with your username and password depending on the server that you're connecting to. And now let's just say if there is nothing in this connection, then we want to be able to close the connection, and in VB we'll say if not underscore con and then we'll just close that. And so now what we'll do here is connect to the we'll create our connection string. So now this is what we're going to be able to use to connect to the database connection string. And this is just going to be a string format. We'll say there we go. And now we can just put the connection string in there, and then first put the server. All right, so now because this is a string format sort of thing, and as you can see here in the string, if you're not used to this, in the string format, you see I put this 0, this 1, this 2, this 3, and what that simply means is that the arguments that go in here, when I'm done, I'll put that in order last. So for 0, what that is that's going to be my server information, right? So as you can see, server here, 0, that's going to be the first one I'm going to put here. And remember, I did up here, I put that as the server, which is the local host. So I'm going to say server. And then the second one would be username. And then the third one would be password. And then the last thing would be database name. So just in case you're not familiar with this, like I said before, this is just a string, connection string. And basically this is how the server is, what it's looking for. It's looking for things in this order, the MySQL server. So it's looking for the server, it's looking for the username, it's looking for the password, the database, and I put pooling as false. Now when I put the server here, here's the first parameter, ID will be the second parameter, third and fourth parameter. Now what I have to do when I'm done with that, after this comma, I have to put each one of these in order. If I were to switch these around, put database here, then that means I would be putting database here. But because server is here, that means server goes into this parameter here. So that's how this string format thing works, just in case you weren't familiar with it. And if you were, I'm sorry I wasted your time, but let's move on. So I'm going to go put this in a try, and I'm going to open my connection. So I'm going to call the connection and .open. And I want to make sure it's open, so I'm just going to do a message box, and I will say connected. And if it's not connected, message box. If there's a problem, message box. I'm going to show that problem if there's a problem in executing that. Now, because this is let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to need access to the connection string, I believe. And if not, it's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and make a no, that should be good enough. Okay, so now let's go over to the module that we'll be using. To execute it. Right now, I don't have access to that that class, so what I have to do is I have to make a reference to that class. So I'm just going to say dim mycon as new my con. Now I'm connecting to that class we just created by doing this. And from here, what I'll do when this runs, I'll say okay, yeah, so I'm going to have to close the connection after this. As you see here, I never closed the connection. I opened the connection, but I never closed it. Okay? I put here if there was nothing in there, close it, but after I opened it, I never closed it, so I'm going to have to close the connection. And this is why I need access to this private variable here. So what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to create a public property that get access to this variable. I mean, I very well could do this and make it public, but this is not really good form to do that. So it's better to make a public property. And I'll call that con. And as you see up here is underscore con, and this one's just con, so those are two different variables. That's my I don't need the setter. All I want to do is return underscore con. So I don't need to set anything. So now I have access to this con through this con here. So now when I go to my module, I can just say my con dot close. There we go. So now let's run it and let's see what happens. So we didn't get the alert. We were supposed to get an alert that something, that it was connected. Okay, so what it looks like here is that in our server, I'm blaming you, but I put local whole, I don't know how to even pronounce that, hoat, but so it's a misspelling. So that is probably the issue there. So let's run it again and see what happens. And there it goes. We're connected to the VB, the MySQL database. And later on, what you can do once you have that connection, you can go ahead and insert things into the database. You can update, you can list, you can select, you can do all the things. You can run stored procedures. You can do all the things you normally would do inside of a database. So normally this is the hardest part for people to get to the connection, but that's basically it. You have the connection, and if you have any questions, go ahead and email me or put them in the comments below.